as you know from Liz, we do a fraud indicator, which we publish every few years. We are planning to publish one this year, which gauges the size of the fraud problems in the UK economy. One of the areas that we have been interested in the past, but we've never been able to really find a way of gauging it, is insolvency fraud. And obviously, when Liz came to me, it did, sort of get me interested. So I was happy to facilitate this meeting today. We're here to listen. This is also my colleague, I should mention, Dr. David Shepherd. He is the number cruncher for the fraud indicator, so he's also very interested in what you have to say today. So the way I propose to take this forward is perhaps if we just go around the room, just say very briefly, don't go into too much who you are and what your interest is, and then I'll hand over to Liz to kind of take the meeting forward. I booked this room till 3:30. I don't know if there's someone else come in afterwards. Hopefully not. So we've got at least till 3:30. Hopefully we need to do a bit more if there's no one else in this room afterwards. So I've introduced David. So if we start with you.
Yes, good morning everybody. My name's Adrian Rice. I generally describe myself as a general purpose truth activist, but I'm here today on behalf of the New Chartist Movement and the British Constitution Group, for whom I maintain their 2 websites.
I'm Anthony Sansfield. I'm the Police and Crime Commissioner for Thames Valley, and my interest is that we did the HBOS one, which we're now getting. I hope everyone saw the Sir Ross Cranston report. They're going to have to pay out, I think, the best part of £1 billion for what went on there. But we've got a very long way to go, which I'm very aware of.
Hi, my name's Michelle Young. I went through a very high-profile divorce. I believe my ex-husband was murdered. They've stolen assets in the region of £4 billion. They bankrupted me shortly after his murder, and this is 13 years later.
My name's Bob White. I'm a victim of unlawful bankruptcy and also an unlawful eviction, where I was evicted in February last year, but at the moment I've taken back possession now, end of March last year, and I'm still in possession at the moment. I've also got, when I was evicted, I was charged by the police with an affray, originally assaults, but they changed it to affray, so I'm waiting for a trial to come up in May this year.
I'm Tope Lee of Maidstone and Kent. I've been subject to fraudulent legal bankruptcies, evictions, LPA receivers, trustees in bankruptcy that haven't been appointed, court cases where they haven't paid a fee to initiate proceedings, assaults by the police, dragged out of the house. I'm still fighting. That was back in June 2015. I'm in possession of the property, and I'm still fighting the trustees and the insolvency and the corrupt Maidstone County Court, who will not accept applications of fraud, even despite I've got all the evidence of the proof from start to finish. So yeah, I'm here to support everyone else that's been subjected to this criminality, and to help bring a change to the system, the corrupt system, as we know it.
I'm Anthony Coles, or Tony Coles for most people. I've been illegally evicted 4 times, assaulted every time. I've had 70% of my possessions smashed up, literally smashed up. I've had all my stuff that's worth anything stolen. I'm challenging a lot of the paperwork with the courts, who we know are fraudulent. I've got currently a case against me for assault on an emergency worker, because the constable took exception to me hitting him with a rubber mallet for some reason. But he did mace me first. So yeah, I'm here obviously with everybody else. Currently I haven't got my property back. I'm currently homeless because the council won't help me. I can't rent privately, so I'm actually staying with my daughter. So, which is awkward because I've got 2 dogs and she don't like dogs.
Yeah, myself and my wife, Bob Jackson, Marie Rhodes Jackson, were evicted from our home after 24.5 years. Didn't owe a penny to a mortgage, didn't owe a penny to anyone. We had no creditors whatsoever. Debt was levied upon us of around £30,000, which was never substantiated at any time. and unfortunately, the way the court system is, the judges found against us, and everything was stacked up from there to, you know, accommodate the claimants. And even though we went to pay the actual debt on the day of bankruptcy, they refused to take the cheque, and I was subsequently made bankrupt.
And they took her house instead, didn't they?
Yes, they took her house, and even though she had nothing to do with it whatsoever, they took her half of the house as well.
And I was made bankrupt as well.
And no creditors whatsoever. None of the two has owed a penny to anyone.
Me, I'm John Briggs, and I'm just concerned about these ghastly crimes and the way that the authorities seem to do nothing at all about it. They just shouts of corruption.
Any book?
Oh, a book about money corruption, but that's all.
Alice and the Money Tree, which you can get from Amazon. Excellent book, explaining about the corruption in the money, the banking and corporation world.
The way that money is supplied, debt-based currency, just hoovers up the wealth of the whole world, and we're all working on this debt-based tax farm. Nobody understands it. I put this together to hope to get it under the radar, written like a child's book almost, because nobody understands. It's such a ghastly crime that the human brain can't take it in. They're being so mugged with it. I mean, money is just it's a medium to. I better not branch on about this, but money is a medium like oil. And if you went to a garage and to buy a gallon of oil, and the bloke said you've got to give it back next year, and the year after that, and every year until you do a pint of oil, you'd be outraged. But that is how money is introduced into the system. Just fraud.
My name's Eddie. I work with British Constitution Group, New Chartist Movement, Common Law Call, UK Column, and other organisations. And we in the office of the UK Column, they get calls every day. I mean, there are hundreds, thousands of people all over the United Kingdom with horrific stories of unlawful bankruptcies and asset stripping and other terrible things. So it's happening throughout the United Kingdom, and we also know it's a global agenda, so it's happening beyond the United Kingdom, it's happening all throughout the world. And we believe it's part of the United Nations Agenda 2030.
My name is Ian Beacon. My main interest is fraud within the court system. It's totally corrupt, and something needs to be done about it. So, yeah.
Carrie Hines. Like you, my main interest is fraud in the court system, banking system.
I'm Kerry, and I'm worked and concerned about my kids and grandchildren, because I can see that Britain is no longer a country, it's become a company, and there's corruption through the banking system and the courts joined in with them, and it's gone into Parliament as well, and if something's not done, we've got to help our next generation. So I'm trying to see what, if anything, can be done to stop it.
My name's Adrian Bolton. I help Adrian look after the website for the New Charters. So.
I'm Lorraine Adams. I've come over from the Isle of Wight with John. We had a very successful business, a family business that my father and mother started in 1971, Flamingo Park, a lovely wildlife park. Unfortunately, we applied to have a house built adjacent to my parents on the land, and that's when it all started in 1991 with the local authority officers, NatWest Bank officers, and now we found out land registry officers have basically put whatever mechanism possible to tie us into our homes and our site and our land, to devalue it systematically for all these years. Dad finally passed away in 2014. We found out, we shut the park in 2015 because we just couldn't get out. They were just fraudulent documents with all my father's probate. We don't think it's his signature on his will at Winchester Probate. And basically we've shut, and now we're systematically being abused by break-ins, people breaking into my flat, cutting up my rugs and my carpet, threatening my mother, and this is our local authority and land registry officers and NatWest Bank.
I'm better than your local authority. Do you want my number just in case you gain any more shit? Because I'll be across there, mate, because I've had enough of these bastards.
I've unravelled it for 4 years. They destroyed us and we're trapped in living off our savings and we can't sell. All selling agents, Savills, all of them are all working it. And the developers are circling and circling and circling and leaving red brick dust outside our house and threatening us that we're in a rocky road now until they're going to just drive us out. They want the land. It's a nice piece of land, but they made it worthless to the family.
Okay, I'm Ken Johns, a fan. I'm sorry, are you going to speak?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm John Roll. I live on the Isle of Wight, the other side of the island on the road. I'm a victim of land fraud mixed up with solicitors and land registry, big time land registry. I never realised they were so corrupt. And they just overtake you. At the moment, I've got a big, right on the point of starting a big case against the Isle of Wight police for false arrest, because I've got really big evidence, and because they stopped me from going to court with my files to support another person. And I got absolute 100% proof of witness tampering by the police, and I'm just at the point of trying to get legal aid to go to court over it. As I say, I live on and I believe you do.
I do, yeah.
I'll give you my phone number.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely. And there is one question I would, if anybody knows the answer to, I would like them to come and see me and tell me. And that is this. It's a 2002 Police Reform Act. Remove the power of attorney from police to investigate property and land fraud. Is that true? Yeah, I mean, there's nobody. I've written to the police, I've written to everybody, and they all hedge round the subject. I wanted to find out whether it was true or not.
From what I know, yes, since they introduced the Land Registration Act 2002, the police no longer investigate these kind of matters normally.
So I've got proof in this thing that I'm taking them to court for, that they investigated the document and then they arrested me. And I can prove it because they doctored it.
I believe you.
And they are so stupid sometimes that you know, they time themselves, the police time themselves up in nothing. You know, and I've got this evidence. So I'm going to throw back in their face. But yes, you can't be a bench judge, and there's plenty of evidence.
I am an expert in court records and court procedures. I became, because I had to. In 2015 I was unlawfully evicted without court orders, without eviction order from my home. And my field of interest is the complete lack of accountability of the court administrations. You need only 3 people to completely deviate a court case: a delivery manager, an operation manager, and a listing manager. The listing manager will direct the case over a certain member of the judiciary selected. The operation manager will cover up everything, and the delivery manager will tamper the court records. That's all you need. So there's no point in just investigating insolvency practitioner or the banks or the mortgages. The roots of the problem is the complete lack of accountability of the court administration, and that's where the problem is.
And because
There's no point in investigating anywhere else than there. Because no insolvency practitioner will be able to do what they do, no solicitor would be able to do what they do, no banks will be able to do what they do.
Yeah,
So that's
right.
where we have
That's
to
the
Yeah.
issue.
investigate.
Yes,
That's the
judiciary.
issue.
Could you give us your name, please?
My name is Victor Foglia. When you access records, I've seen many court records, orders produced by the court without anything filed from the opposite side. And I've seen many. My case is not the only case. There are many cases like that.
They don't pay the fee.
Court records are the key to understand the fraud.
So what you're saying, Victor, because there's no administration, this is what's allowing all the forged court
There is
documents.
no accountability.
Because of the there's no
I've been writing
administration,
when
this is
I
why we're having forged
when I
documents.
discovered what happened in my case. I wrote to the court manager. In
Yes.
5 years, I didn't have any acknowledgement of my letter, let alone a response.
And because of the
And
officers
it's,
of the court.
and it's one of the few cases where a judge has signed a tier 1 instead of me to transfer my home into somebody else's name. So they can do what they want because they are not
No,
accountable.
because
at the
they're not
moment.
because they're officers of the court, they seem to be above the law. That's what seems to be
They
happening.
are above the law.
Like you say, there's no accountability.
And the judges won't find against them because they're officers of the law. You know, therefore, they seem to be above the law, and therefore it makes it impossible for anybody to do anything about it.
Can we move on to this?
I'll move on to this lady.
Oh, okay. My name's Julia Langley, and I don't know where to start. But what this gentleman was just saying about the documents, I tried to get the court file on my case down in Plymouth, and when I finally got it, it was a complete mess. It was just repeats of nothing. Witness statements and applications that I'd made, proving my case, removed. That was just one aspect of this. The fraud, I could prove the fraud. I got a detective sergeant involved, went up to the High Court, but they wouldn't allow us to take it further, so I tried to get it into UCHR. But every time I went somewhere, I was being blocked, no grounds and reasons given, and yet, you have these criminal laws in place, and they're breaking them. It started with the farmer solicitors in Plymouth. They'd taken 3 houses. One of the homes I was living in for 27 years, and they came, it still upsets me. This was the 8th of December 2017. There was 12 of them, and they smashed the front of my home and the back, and they took out the windows. I was still in bed. I didn't know what was going on. They had no court order. There was a bailiff there, and I had 3 court applications before the court over all that was going on, including a freezing order, and had a crime reference number from CID because we needed them to investigate what was going on. That's all been sort of salvaged, left to one side. I've gone to the MP. Since then, I've been in touch with the House of Commons Select Committee for Justice, House of Commons Select Committee for Policy. I've been to the Ombudsman. I've been to the Department of Justice. I've gone to the Lord Chancellor recently, and the Baroness Ruby McGregor-Smith, who's appointed by Theresa May to look into these injustices, which I think is interesting. Now, I've been in touch with an ex-policeman and a journalist who told me about Liz, and another lady who told me about Michelle. So there's been some networking going on, and an awful lot of what people have said, I had it happen to me with the documents, no court seals. Anyway, I was waiting for today to see what we could manifest to change a lot of this before I take the next step. I don't know what the Lord Chancellor thinks. I've gone into a file, I've gone through every year, I've gone through all of it, no proceedings, court orders made, I didn't even know about them. All this, and they try and deny it. And somebody tried to hack my computer. My belongings have gone missing, and they took some money that was from my husband who died of cancer from the Ministry of Defence, and that's another burning potential. What I owed is nonsense because the case was brought on perjury. The person didn't have the legal standing to bring the claim. They didn't turn up to court. It struck out of court. Solicitor, nobody turned up, and of course you look into all the laws and all the case law, like everybody does. You know, you put it all together, and yet it gets ignored. Oh, anyway, I've said enough. Sorry.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Andy Agathangelo. 5 years ago, I began the Transparency Task Force, which has become an international organisation dedicated to shining a big, bright light on the sorts of things we're talking about today, and other types of malpractice, malfeasance, misconduct, mis-selling, and so on in the financial services and professional sectors. There's clearly a swamp. It clearly needs to be drained. I've been disgusted by what I've been learning through people like Anthony Stansfeld and Liz about what's been happening to totally innocent people in our country, and others, by the way. There's something seriously and systemically wrong. It needs to be fixed. It's going to be a mountain to climb. The only way we can possibly do it is if people like us find ways of working together collaboratively, and that's going to take very special people to make it happen. And I want to put on record, I think what Liz has done today in bringing this meeting about with Portsmouth Uni is absolutely fantastic. This is exactly the kind of momentum building and energy building approach that's going to make a difference, because eventually our collective voices will be too loud to be ignored.
Yeah. Well said. Yeah.
You're just going round.
Everyone, I'm doing everyone on behalf of Sheila.
I'm William May. I've been researching the frauds which have been undertaken by Lloyds Banking Group for the last 10 years, I suspect, almost. We've now got 26 individual different types of fraud, and we're holding a press conference in the Queen Elizabeth II Centre in Westminster on the 25th of February to highlight the MPs, business leaders, the press, the TV, all coming.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Sheila Waraki. I would like to thank Mrs. Watson and the head of the department of the university, and Mr. Anthony Sanchez, who has been a great support to all of us. Without his support, I wouldn't be in my home today again, because unlawfully we've been ejected from our family home, where we lived for 22 years, and all our bills are up to date. Me and my husband been sued for a fee of the convicted criminal, who since 2008 has been in the front of every newspaper, Dean and Dean solicitor, Shah of Scandal. And this was the invoice. They have bankrupt me and my husband for £19,814.14p, which we have paid in full and we do not owe him. For last 15 years, I'm fighting to get justice for myself and my family and other victims of the bogus bankruptcies, because they are misusing the act, abusing the rule of law by wrongly bankrupting people. And fortunately, just my new MP has again written to the, I got a copy of her letter to the Parliamentary Select Committee, to the SOS, Secretary of State, to making inquiry. How could we, highly solvent state, to be made bankrupt? And now I have proven through the court, and High Court judge, Court of Appeal judge are saying me and my husband are wholly innocent. To the victim of miscarriage of justice, they will compensate, not to come to their house out of blue. And I will fully support Mr. Victor Flogo that this is corruption in the court, because I can prove it to everyone. On 17th of December, I was in the court, and the delivery manager was assuring me there is no any activity on your file, Dr. Raki. Just, I said, can you print and give me the latest activities on my file? And he gave me an order that I have to attend the court on 12th of February. I said, fine, fair enough. I came home, out of blue, Wednesday on 19th, early morning, 7:20, I got a full team of the bailiff, police. They know my husband is unwell, the ambulance, everyone coming to the house and forcing to open the door. I refused to open the door. They break into 2 doors of my house, and they throw me unlawfully, like a bag of potato, out of my home.
And stole her jewellery.
And they have stolen my documents, my jewelry, and I was begging them, please give me 24 hours. I just go to court because the delivery manager, Mr. Stephen Shersby, assured me there was no any risk of possession. I have written to the court no ex parte activities on my file, yet they came out of blue, they went and they got a risk of possession. So far in this invalid bankruptcy, I have defeated 2 trustees, and the third one is the partner of the same law, 2 previous one, and has come, and she's more aggressive than other 2. When I have had a ruling from the High Court say the bankruptcy court order ought not to have been made at the time was made. Insolvency Act 1986, Section 2821A. And according to this section, petitioner who brought this invalid proceeding has to pay the cost. According to the CPR rule, the costs follow the events. I won my case. We were wrongly made bankrupt, but the High Court deputy judge, who is a practicing barrister, pension barrister, who does not know anything about the insolvency law, and I got a transcript of the hearing to prove it. I said, with all respect, Your Honor, you may be a best judge in the world, but it's like a surgeon for the brain specialist to say do the operation on heart. I look at your profile, you are a patient barrister, and you have no insolvency service, insolvency experience. And we said, while we are a member of the board, we have to take every case that comes up. And here there is a barrister who will assist me. And who is the barrister? A non-party to the proceeding, who is representing the so-called trustee in bankruptcy, and he came to the hearing. I will provide this university with whole transcript of the hearing, lying, cheating, misleading the judge.
And they're not a trustee.
And I have proven there is no certificate of the appointment. There is, we never been bankrupt, and yet the recent judge, 2017, the same judge who gave the order for my family home and for our business, came back to the case as a chief registrar. That time it was a deputy registrar, and he ordered the possession order for 9 properties. These properties all belong to my sister, brothers, my cousin, and we have got all the deeds of the trust proving what it is. And another important thing I would like to say, I'm a victim of the Iranian the tyranny government of Iran. We immigrate to England, we brought capital to this country. My father was a general of the army in the Shah times, and we have 41 years in this country. I have not used a penny from public resources. And yet they want to strip me and my family from all our assets just because I report a con man to the Law Society, and I did not withdraw my complaint from the Law Society.
I'm going to take your case to the replacement for Lady McKeer. I don't know whether she resigned on normal time, but she's just left. But what I find extraordinary in both yours and Michelle's case, the guilty people involved have both put in complaints against me, which have to be taken through the system, for interfering in their cases. Because they're not bad, but I'm an elected official, I'll interfere where I like.
You're doing your job. Yeah. In my case, the fraud has been acknowledged by court in the judgment of the 11th January 2017.
Let's get on to the solution now.
Yeah, they are saying that we are willing to accept the order has been obtained by fraud, but fraud unravels all.
I need a simple case laid out that I can take straight up to the judge and ask for the inquiry.
Yeah, I would like even the university to make it, if they have got a student and researchers, to take the cases and do the research, do a documentary film. 15 years slavery in the court. These 2 hands already have been broken by the police and the security of the court.
But Sheeda, there's so many people in this room, we're all victims. I think the easiest way is exactly what Anthony wants to do. We stick to the forged document campaign where everyone in the room gets justice. It's not just you, it's all of us. We must get on to the solution.
We've
got to all be...
I said mine, all this case can be an example of all other miscarriage of justice with all other victims.
A couple of people came in. Marina, you haven't spoken, have you?
Yes.
Well, in 2015, I was allegedly made bankrupt. I was a practicing dentist with my own practice. I did have money difficulties, I will admit to that. And I was banking with Lloyds, and they weren't very helpful. They put me into their BSU in Bristol, and then they appointed official receivers, but I fought that, and I told them the appointment wasn't legal, which it wasn't, because they didn't do it by deed. So one morning I turned up at my practice, and they were there, and they stole my practice. I'd also been made bankrupt three weeks previously, and because I wouldn't comply with the trustee in bankruptcy, who I've also got an appointment letter with no court seal on it. I loved my job. I absolutely loved my career. I spent 28 years being a dentist, brought up 4 children, had a terrible car accident, lost my finger and thumb, was told I'd never work again, but I got through that. And I got back to work and had this beautiful practice, and they stole it from me. So because I was determined not to let my patients down, I found somewhere else to work within 2 weeks, another practice. They let me use their rooms I rented, and I got my patients to come in. And so I thought, well, that's okay. And then what happened was the trustee in bankruptcy, I didn't know this at the time, had phoned up the General Dental Council behind my back and told them that I'd left all my patient records in my practice, which I had done because I turned up and couldn't get into the practice. They were all locked away. You know, CQC had been in, Quality Care Commission, so I knew that I'd done everything correctly. The trustee in bankruptcy then taken all the patients' records, and when I was started to see patients at the new place, I didn't have access to the records, so I told them to ring him up or email him to give them the records. He didn't like that, so he, behind my back, rang up the General Dental Council and started telling them I had things on my website because I don't like putting amalgams in, and he got them to instigate proceedings against me. And he also rang up where I was working and told them stories about me, and I ended up not being able to work anymore, and I was suspended by the General Dental Council for not looking after my patients' records, even though I couldn't get access to them because they were locked in filing cabinets. And I found out last year that actually it was the trustee in bankruptcy, he is supposed to keep the records and only give them to patients, but he tried to force them back on me and caused me problems with the General Dental Council, and I've been suspended ever since for not looking after my patients' records. So not only did I lose my house, I then lost my house about 3 or 4 months later, and they sent police in, smashed the window. My daughter got a bit of glass thrown in her face, and it was an illegal writ because I had proceedings in the High Court. I'd had a hearing in the High Court. We had another one pending, and the solicitors had gone to another firm of solicitors who went to a court 200 miles away, a county court 200 miles away, to get a writ of possession, even though the proceedings were in the High Court, to say that I was a trespasser in my own home. They used a form that they should never ever have used. There are 3 criteria, and all 3 criteria were not fulfilled. I was not a trespasser, there were proceedings pending, and there was a High Court that I'd already been in the High Court. I can't get any of the documents from the courts. I tried to get the documents from my practice, and then that was in the High Court with Chancery. I'd actually paid a court fee. They never ever dealt with it, so they owe me for the money for that. And I've been trying to get the records, and they're telling me the records have been destroyed. I know, but they've told me this, and I've got the ICO onto them. And so, you know, I've lost my family life because my children can't live with me anymore. They can't come see me at Christmas. They're grown up, but I have to live in a tiny little flat because all I get is £1,100 a month pension from my NHS, and by the time I've paid rent and everything, I get next to nothing to live on. But the worst thing was I lost the profession that I absolutely love, and I still get patients emailing me and saying to me, "Are you practicing? Because I'd love to come and see you again." So they took away everything from me.
And Marina, I have to say to you, I agree with you. Everyone in this room, it doesn't just affect us; it affects all our family,
That's
our
right.
children. You know, the children have to go through so much trauma, they never
Yes.
ever get over it. So this is, if this isn't stopped, God help everyone, because these criminals that are controlling this global system, who are certain families, have to be stopped.
There's so many people out there don't even believe if we say this thing is happening.
Yeah.
The vast majority of people out there say land registry or a thing like that. Police wouldn't do it.
But you know something, Ed is right. This is part of an agenda called Agenda 2030, where they intend to bankrupt everybody globally. And we've got to put a spoke in the wheel with people like great people like Anthony and the Professor here to stop this at this stage.
One of my youngest daughter, 3 days ago, I think it was 3 days ago or last week, the girl she used to share a house with in Newcastle, her father committed suicide for money reasons, leaving two young adults without a father, and the trauma they've gone through. And another girl, another one. My youngest daughter, unfortunately, she has two friends who had a parent who committed suicide because of money.
I'd like to say I'm Denise Winton. I'm Mrs. Mother, and I'm here because both my daughters have been attacked by these illegal procedures. I don't know how many court attendances we've made, and it doesn't matter what evidence you have or what you can show. There's nobody to show it to. There's no way we have been able to prove that they have made my daughters bankrupt. They've done everything they could, threatened to take their houses, and created a great amount of fear. I'm listening to all of you. I know exactly how you feel, but I do hope that they can. In all my 90 years, I have never seen anything like the past 20 years.
But they don't just take your things away, they destroy your life. If you don't
Just
comply,
just
they
one-
absolutely go in
Especially
and
if
destroy
you fight your
everything.
case, if you try to fight your case, they try to find another way to, you know, they stop your benefit, they kick you out somehow, whatever.
But I think, Professor Butt, you come up to the figure of 190 billion.
Sure.
But there's another more than that you're not looking at, which is the bankruptcy frauds, insolvency frauds, the signature frauds, the guarantee frauds, the securitization frauds, the rights issue frauds, which are vast, land registry frauds, legal practices, and the value as an estate agent's frauds.
Yeah.
And there is an absolute corruption within the professional services at the moment.
Yes.
And the sums of money are far bigger than the ones you're actually delineating here.
Yeah. Well, to give you some background, obviously, there used to be an organisation called the National Authority, which had its fraud indicator. The government got rid of that organisation, and obviously with that, the fraud indicator. So we saw a gap to fill, because we thought that the cost of fraud should be measured in the UK economy. But we built upon the methodology of what the National Fraud Authority used by the breakdown of the different sectors. We did make some changes. So in particular, we focused upon the turnover of private companies, expenditure of government organisations. But there are gaps, you're absolutely right. When we published the first one of our reports, and the first one was 193 billion, we were very worried that people would think we were bonkers that come in at such a high figure. But as those figures have settled down, people actually come to me now and say, well, you're kind of missing lots of stuff, and the figures are much bigger. And insolvency fraud is something that we have discussed, isn't it, David? And it's finding a way to gauge the size of the problem, though, because obviously we're academics. We have to do something which is rooted in some kind of evidence, and just saying, well, we think it's £1 billion or whatever in insolvency fraud or whatever we figure. So we can't do that. We have to have some kind of methodological basis to determine what that cost is. You know, very simplest. You know, if all of you are victims and we added up, you know, all of your, you know, claims, you know, there's a kind of detected level there. You know, you're obviously the tip of the iceberg, I would guess. So, you know, there are means that we could possibly gauge the size of the problem, but
I think it's the number of companies that have been bankrupted that you could look at. I mean, the RBS, they took down 16,000 companies, and probably 6,000 of those, I don't know, were probably insolvent for business reasons. But I would have thought at least 10,000 of them were practical companies that they deliberately bankrupted by calling in loans at very short notice. And if you take, a lot of them were, you know, sort of 20, 30 million pound companies, some were bigger. Very few of them were under $1 million. But you've only got to multiply 10,000 by 5 million, and you start coming up with some very big sums very quickly. And that was just the one bank. I mean, the one out of Bristol, out of Reading, was probably $1 billion. But that was just one little branch of one bank that we found out about.
There is also the side effect that people who has been deprived by everything, not only they will stop paying taxes, they probably go on the benefits, so they will be on taxpayers. So there will be an added figure to fraud. Global.
We've done work on, you know, the wider costs of fraud on individuals and organisations, and you know, we did a very big piece of research about 10 years ago on fraud victims, and obviously health, you know, suicide, psychological problems, you know, the costs of all of those, you know, are huge. So yeah, we're very much aware of these additional costs. Yeah.
Have you looked into, or are you aware of anything, in layman's terms, it's a smart city agenda? Have you come across this before? Because there is an agenda in this country and other countries to, it revolves very much around technology, with the latest 5G, for instance, smart meters, the Internet of Things. They're constructing modern cities across the United Kingdom. Manchester is a classic example. If you go there now, there are cranes all over the skyline where they're throwing up these modern apartments, stack them and pack them is what they're described as. People in rural areas are struggling now to live in those areas. Post offices are being closed down, public transport is being degraded, local shops are disappearing, all these sort of services that made it convenient for people to live in rural areas are disappearing. And now with what that's coming to light with the unlawful bankruptcies and the asset stripping, there's an agenda, there's a policy to push, to encourage and push people into these smart cities. And Bristol is designated as a flagship smart city, so it is official. So academics like yourself can.
I think we have to be very careful, I think, not to expand this to everything and get into conspiracy theories. I think we've got to stick it with fraud and the establishment within the fraud system. And I think a lot of the problem stems that the establishment has become a revolving door with the professions. And you see this, you know, the classic one was the chairman of the Financial Conduct Authority in his previous job as senior partner at KPMG when they fiddled the HBOS audits to the tune of 38 billion. And they then did the rights issues for 15 billion. Now these are massive frauds that, you know, on a spectacular scale that nobody's been held to account for. I mean, the classic one, you know, you've probably seen the film, The Big Short, which is well, you should see it. But it was in America. About 5 or 6 people put their hands up in it and said the system is utterly, basically bankrupt, the overall system of mortgages. This was with Fannie Mae, and everybody told them they were absolutely crackers. And the entire thing collapsed, really, in about a week. And we're going through the same system here, I think. with the mortgages and everything else that the banks are selling on.
Yeah.
There is a huge problem
Thanks, Anthony.
underlying.
Yeah, I was just trying to highlight the
Yeah.
bigger picture.
Yeah, but I think
it
we
is
have
a
to be very
conspiracy.
careful.
It's not a conspiracy
No.
theory. There is evidence to back all
Yeah,
of this
but
up.
it's a different. I think we can only take on so many fights at once.
Sure.
Is the
I'm
problem.
just trying
And
to
I think
highlight
it's
the figure
it's
again.
the frauds that are coming out of banks that has permeated into all the other professions and our court system that we have to go for.
Exactly.
And it's very difficult because the Treasury Select Committee, I think, will have both Kevin Hollinrake and Steve Baker on it, and they will go for it, those two. And I think they will do it. The Home Affairs Select Committee should also be investigating this. We've had such a turnover in the Ministry of Justice, it's been difficult to know who to talk to. And of course, people are already there for a short period of time. They're run by their civil servants. And all the civil servants, especially in the Treasury, are looking at their next job in a bank. And all the people in the regulatory authorities go backwards and forwards into the banks. So they are adjudicating on themselves and on their chums. And it's very difficult to break the circle that who guards the guardians.
But there's also an infiltration of an organisation called Common Purpose. Now, the evidence thank you for writing that down. Common Purpose. The evidence for this has been well documented, and it's been exposed by the national media.
Yeah, I don't think there is some great big overall conspiracy. I think there's a great overall corruption, that we've created corruption within the system. And I think a lot of the problem is people don't realise it's corruption. It's become common practice.
It's like politicians getting jobs in investment banks. They're not going to investigate investment banks because majority of politicians end up there anyway.
I think there's a lot. I mean, I always, the boy, but I hark back when I was in the organisation that investigated the Hong Kong police when it was found they were corrupt. And we found the trouble was that the more we looked, the more apparent it was that everybody was corrupt. And the trouble was, you couldn't do away with the police. Now, we're in the situation here slightly, you can't do away with our banks. Because we can't do that. They've got to carry on. But what we've got to do is, I think, is take out one or two of the high-priced ones very publicly. And I would love to see the police march into Gresham Street and arrest half a dozen people. I think the lesson has to go down, and jail them. But at the moment, nobody's being held responsible, so they get away with it. And I think until we stop them getting away with it, it will go on, I'm afraid.
Conscious of the time, so we've only got the room definitely till 3:30, hopefully a bit longer. So I think I'll hand over to Liz now. We'll obviously take some notes and maybe we'll make some comments at the end, because obviously I hope to do this for you, Les, and I think you need to kind of take the initiative now.
I want to thank everyone for coming, and especially want to thank Professor Mark Button and Anthony Stansfeld, who enabled this to happen today, because Anthony has been a lifesaver for me at a time in the darkest hour. Early 2018, KPMG came scratching at the door, wanting to seize my estate, having got land registry nobbled, to put charges on our house, and we've not had a penny from any bank. And I discovered, literally since 2016, after living in my house for 22 years, now 27 years, that a local solicitor called David Webb from Matthew & Matthews, Seabourn Road, Bournemouth, had taken out 7 mortgages on my house, secured on the stolen freehold of my property, which I paid cash for, or so I thought, in 1993. And I found out that he was working with an international cabal, including Porter Osorio, the previous CEO of Santander, who I discovered 3 days ago had set up a trust in my name and my husband as the beneficiary, currently worth £10.5 million or more, and had this forensic loan report came through from America, from a whistleblower from the Fannie Mae crisis, American attorney who I've been blessed to come across, showing that the trust was set up by Porter Osorio and Nathan Bostock, the CEO of Santander. Their mugshots are even on the report. And basically they had stolen my identity. And this is another problem which has to be identified, that people's names, legal names, that's legal name fraud. Carmel Butler wrote a brilliant report for Parliament. If you look at Carmel Butler's reports on securitisation, legal name fraud, and mortgage fraud. Brilliant woman. She was in touch with me in 2016. She had a nervous breakdown. She worked in the lawyer's office in New York. She lost everything. She came over here. I believe she's now might be working at Mishkonrea. I haven't been able to track her down. She's gone on to better things, but she's really had to rebuild her life. My heart goes out to everybody in this room. I know your pain, I know your suffering, but we are part of the solution, and I'm interested in focusing on the solution, because we could talk for months on end about the problem, but we have to become that solution. And as I understand it, simple principles, Sun Tzu, The Art of War, it's the curriculum at Harvard Business School, let's face it. We need to implement that. We need to work on simple principles. It's a very thin book. You can buy it on Amazon, The Art of War, Sun Tzu. And that is, we have to get leverage over the heart of the problem. As I see it, the leverage is needed on the Treasury, who are controlling the nation's money supply, and they are blocking all training for counter-fraud, which we need people like Professor Mark Button, hopefully to create a flagship from Portsmouth University, bless them, to lead the way for all universities in England, which has a tremendous educational system, the red brick universities as well, to follow suit and create more criminal justice studies to train up our police. How can anybody be upholding the law and acting in the law? Lawbreakers may not be law enforcers. Every single police officer should be, it should be compulsory for them to do criminal justice counter-fraud training. Because at the moment, and I believe if any of you disagree, tell me, but none of us have anywhere to turn with any clout. Nobody is listening. Even the evidence has not been looked at in the courts. On my own case, I think they've changed the claim number a bit like bus tickets about 7 times. It's gone on for 13 years. I've had 30 judges on my case. I've been before about 20 of them before I finally joined up the dots and figured it out that I was being conned with a pile of leaves. There was no claim in the system. It was all a scam set up by Eversheds, who were servicing agents of the Jersey Line series of trusts, which I've discovered and tracked. The deception seems to have started in 2001 when Halifax PLC merged with Governor of Bank of Scotland, set up in 1695, called it HBOS. HBOS, apparently from a banking expert, Mervyn Isles, has said that it was never a bank, it was a holding company. He also opened my eyes that Bank of Scotland Lloyds Banking Group PLC is not a bank either. Does anybody know that in here? Would the layman know that? Bank of Scotland and Lloyds Banking Group PLC are holding companies. Bank of Scotland is a trading name before the merger. They lied to us. There was no merger in January 2009 when the almighty crash happened. The head of risk, Paul Moore, risk lending was Paul Moore, and he wrote this book, Crash Bank Wallop. Recommend this book. And Ian Fraser, who I did a documentary with in 2014, 3rd of March 2014, with, it was through Nick Wallace. If you type in HBOS Nick Wallace, you can see the documentary, 30 minutes. BBC, people knocked them, but they did actually save my house, because I said to them I was in Qatar at the time, my husband was seriously ill, and they rang them up and said, Elizabeth can't come to the court hearing because she's in Qatar, and they tried to get it in early January to push it through so they could get the bailiffs in, seize my house on false papers. I think all of us are battling principalities and powers, false papers. Who is accountable? It's interesting today, 4 people have been sacked. Andrea Legston, who I wrote to last night, Anthony wrote a brilliant email to her, and suddenly, within seconds, I saw it came through that she was sacked. Then I saw Geoffrey Cox, the Attorney General, has just been sacked. I'll come on to in a second. Geoffrey Cox was actually defending Chin Ganga, who was jailed for 15 years in the Vavasour fraud, which was a $233 million heist, which happened in 2001, and the money disappeared without a footprint, without a trace, offshore, and I was a witness at the jury trial, criminal jury trial held in Birmingham in 2007. Unfortunately, the incompetent SFO used Fraser Mackay, the ex-head auditor of HBOS, the trading, the holding company for this corruption, and all the fake accounts, which were servicing accounts to steal through, were being set up by Fraser Mackay, I discovered, and they've been targeting me for the best part of 17 years, so in that time I became a fraud investigator pro bono, because I had to, because they stole billions of my family money, along with a few hundred others, including Norris McWhirter, the founder of the Guinness Book of Records, Sir David Frost, Andrew Lloyd Webber, all these high-profile people. The really high-profile ones, like Lloyd Webber, got paid back. But the little man, like me and my family, didn't get paid back. Instead, we got punished, we got hounded, we got persecuted, and I've traced the bank accounts that Fraser Mackay used. He set up a Fortis bank account and called it Investors Bank and Trust. And through that, he amassed $233 million seed capital, and PricewaterhouseCoopers Marcus Wyde came on the scene in 2005 to deal with the people that were conned into opening up accounts in this Investors Bank and Trust, which was actually his back pocket. And we were told we had to put $5,000 into opening an account, and that was to get the money out of what turned out to be a Ponzi. So there we were thinking we were getting returns on a so-called risk-free investment bond underwritten by Lloyds of London, up to $5 million per client. There again is insurance fraud with Lloyds. Who are the underwriters of Lloyds of London? That's an interesting question for everybody. Mostly judges and MPs, I'll have you know. There's no disclosure or transparency on that list. We need to look into things like that. The mechanisms they are using, the rotten foundation. It is rotten, let's be specific here. Cause and effect. We are the actual resources of this land. We are the indigenous people of England, and we are all suffering because we are being feasted upon. The banks have been so profligate and so crazy, demented and insane and corrupt that they're stealing all of our assets and collateral to capitalise their balance sheet so they can carry on blowing up the bubble bigger and bigger and bigger. And what I've traced they're doing is a man called Robert Lockyer in Jersey, Lloyds Bank International Limited. I took a screenshot at Company's House in October 2019, and I spoke to the CEO Lee Smythe's office and said, hang on a minute, I keep getting these statements once a year saying I owe £407,024.19, which makes up the money claim that they're trying to claim off me and my husband off this fake account we never even opened. How can we be liable? They bankrupt us on the back of it. It's like, hello. And I said, it says here, Bank of Scotland at the top, Lloyds Bank PLC, it's got the number, then it says Lloyds Bank International Limited. And they said, that's illegal, that's fraud. And then I found out later they denied it. They said the person who told me her name was Lisa Baker, doesn't work there. That's a long story short. They removed the footprint on the register of Lloyds Bank International Limited. Again, it wasn't a bank. It was a company laundering for the banks. If you look on Company's House register, there are hundreds of banks which aren't banks, they're companies. That's how they're stealing from us. They use the big name, like Lloyds. The H-Boss is still alive and kicking. They've got about 45 aliases. This is a Machiavellian web of deceit. It's a mendacious web. Anyone who is up against them, find out who is claiming off you. Who is the claimant? We thought the claimant was Bank of Scotland. We found out they don't exist. I could go on, but I want to just explain what they've done. Robert Lockyer in Jersey set up these trusts. I call them the Jersey 9 series. I learnt this from the attorney. They set up these trusts called Permanent Financing Number 1 PLC, Number 2 right up to 9. Each trust was then fractionated into thousands and thousands of sub-trusts. And these were housing all of the fake bank accounts, which were bundled together into little packages and then transposed into purported mortgages, which of course had no promissory note and no mortgage contract, as is the case with us. And sleight of hand, it's like they take them offshore, bundle them up, sell them as mortgage-backed securities, trade them as mortgage-backed securities. They made billions and billions on each of these trusts, I would imagine hundreds of billions. And then, when the life of this trust had finished, they turned them into stocks. They then trade them as stocks on the stock exchange. So who is cheating the stock exchange? Lloyds Banking Group, Porter Osorio, Bostock, the likes of the CEOs. They all know what's going on. I expect the reason Sajid Javid has resigned today is because he knows the dark secrets. Treasury are accountable for the nation's money. They are controlling the purse strings. Our solution is right there. This book by Ryan Holiday, The Obstacle is the Way. let's really think about that. This is a brilliant book. It's like San Suu. I really recommend that we look at the mechanisms they're using, we look at the plot. Insolvency fraud, I said to Professor Mark Button, it's off the scale. Every single person in this room that I've spoken to and across the country that's been told that they are bankrupt has got fake illegal documents. Why are they fake? Because the certificates of appointments for the purported trustees are fake. They have no certification. They're not validated by the court. There's no court seal as required under Rule 6.123 of the Insolvency Act 1986. Without exception, none of them are sealed. How is this happening? Who is accountable? Ministry of Justice, 200 and something directors. Normally in a company, the directors are accessible to the public, are they not? None of us know how to contact the directors of the Ministry of Justice. How can we complain? If you make an email to the Ministry of Justice, average response time 28 days. It's like you're frozen out. So we can't go to the so-called Ministry of Justice. HM Court is an external agency. Yeah. No wonder we're all suffering at the hands of these corrupt courts, which is a commercial playground for the banks. They have become weaponized. Yes. That is my own view. I sent it to William May, and he did that thing at Westminster, an excellent presentation. He's been analysing the frauds of Lloyds Bank. These frauds are immense. We have to do something about it, because every lie is a construct, and every construct has to be dismantled. The truth is actually always very simple. You know, we just have to expose the methodology they're using. The QC, Adam Wiseman, who's running the Dobbs Review, I asked him what his degree was in, and he said methodology. I thought, brilliant. Let's look at the methodology they're using, and let's find our own methodology to get what our constitutional rights are. We are the sovereigns of this country. The reason we have a national insurance number is that we are the insurance of the nation. They are trading our legal names on our birth certificate without our consent of the stock exchange. They are cheating the SEC, the stock exchange, the foreign exchange markets, the IRS, our leverage over the corruption in the British government. And I agree with Anthony, we need some kind of amnesty, that they will go to prison if they don't clean it up. We have to be able to say to the Treasury, we are not entreating you, we are telling you that you will spend not less than £1 billion or £2 billion to clean up this mess, to get the police in a proper training programme, to repay the police that are out of pocket. Anthony's force has been left out of pocket about £6-7 million. How can that be? It's putting out completely the wrong message to the 31 police forces across Britain. No wonder morale is low. People are worrying about their future. We're in a slave system. The fact they're trading your birth bond, and you don't even know it, they can open an account at will. Nobody's stopping them, because we've got these people in their back pockets. The likes of Andrew Bailey, who's becoming our next Bank of England governor. It's like, hello. And who are the Bank of England? Private nominees. Who are they? Who are these private people? Why is there no transparency at the top? You know, considering there's nearly 70 million people in England, I don't know how many universities we've got, but we've got one of the best education systems in the world. You know, I think it's fantastic that you're in the counter-fraud unit. I love what Anthony said the other day about we need some sort of amnesty with the British government. We know who you are, we know what you're doing, we want change, we are change, we're not going to take it. We have our rights. You know, we don't need to be told what our rights are. We know what our rights are. We've got the right to live in peace. We've got a right to shelter. Everybody needs a roof over their head. We need the same good that you need. It's like none of this apartheid thinking. The courts are a disgrace. I will say that. Not a single one of the 7 so-called claim numbers in my case have been issued or sealed by the court. None of them have been served. No certificate of service, no fee paid, the whole 9 yards. I think pretty much all of you have got features or all of these things happening to you. And I think this could be a think tank. We can give you loads of feedback for your criminal justice studies. Work with us. You know, we're here to raise the game and to change things. Because if we don't change it, as people have said, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, what future have they got? We've got all these knife crimes happening. Police time is being spent, you know, parking tickets, speeding fines. What rubbish. The house is burning down while you're sitting in the front room watching the game shows. It's like, for God's sake, you know, what is happening in this country? They're stealing our land, they're stealing our homes, they're stealing our children, they're stealing our businesses on fake papers from an unaccountable private coterie of crooks. And that's my take on it.
Stealing time.
Thanks, Liz. We have a our system is described as constitutional monarchy. We have a common law constitution. Our monarch makes a coronation oath under God's common law, to stand under God's common law, to promote it, to uphold it. All public servants, our monarch is the most senior public servant. All public servants make oaths of office to the monarch to do the same thing. So there is a constitution. It would be clear that in a proper court of law, everything that's going on here would be found to be treason. It's the highest level of crime taking place, so that needs to be taken very seriously. This is what's happening, and people don't want to use that. People don't want to use that word treason for some reason, but this is exactly what's happening. It needs to be acknowledged, it needs to be taken seriously, and it needs to be looked into.
I would like to bring the attention of everybody. One of the biggest problems we're having in the court is that practicing solicitor and barristers are sitting as the judges, deputy judge, district judge. All 15 years of my slavery in the court, 19 years and 15 years with the bankruptcy, it's all coming from the deputy judges. First judge, deputy landlord shelter. And took me 6 years. In 2004, this invalid summary judgment had been made by deputy district judge. To 2011, that I could go after several passing through the several judges, no merit in your application, permission to appeal refused, again and again. 2011 goes coincidentally in front of the real judge,
You made your point.
judge.
And
the permanent judge
I
says,
need from both of you a simple, not more than 2 pages layout, not getting into other people's cases, just on yours with the corruption of the courts within it. And then I need to be able to send that to the presiding judge, and then copy it to the Ministry of Justice, copy it to the Treasury Select Committee, and copy it to the Home Affairs Select Committee, so the judge does something about it. But what I can't have, is stories that go off into other matters and things. It has to be isolated within your own case clearly, that lays out what the court has done wrong, and confine it.
One of the things that's happening, when they pretended that my husband and I were bankrupt in 2nd October 2017, I didn't even get a hearing. Everything was ignored by Richard Pitt.
Yeah, but
He
it's
won't
no
give me
good telling me
disclosure.
this, Liz.
No, but
I have to tell this to somebody else.
I agree,
And
but what I'm
really
explaining
that in a
is,
clear
when they
fashion.
told me, the insolvency mafia, and that's what they are,
Yes.
they told me to go back to the court. When I went back to the court, they put an ECRO on me without issuing the damn claim. And they said, you can't have an oral hearing. So all my rights were abrogated.
This is the problem, Liz.
I need to take this somewhere where it has some traction. And so
The Ministry of
it's
Justice.
no good,
Put them under scrutiny. The
Yeah.
Ministry of Justice.
Well, then it needs to probably the presiding judge to demand that there is an internal inquiry into what is going on. It needs to be the MOJ to keep an eye on it and insist it goes through. I mean, I think the David Linda Dobbs report, unless it's somebody gets at it in some fashion, that has gone on. It started, and of course it is only into HBOS lawyers. That started off with one judge and 2 or 3 lawyers. It's now ended up with about 4 or 5 QCs, 2 full-time, and a team of 50 or 60. The report is going to be absolutely devastating. And it's been done as a criminal investigation by the QCs, and at the end of this year, unfortunately, most of the people will have returned to Santander, because one of the odd things that most of the people recently have come from Santander, whether it's Juan Columbus, Porto or Sorio, the head of RBS went off to run Santander, it's a very, very closed circle.
Well, they should be arrested and put on remand.
I know. Well, again, we say that the City of London is absolutely useless as a police force.
Corrupt.
The action fraud, which is its main job, was passed off to a call centre in Glasgow, and they're not monitored. I mean, the thing was pathetic. I think the Metropolitan Police have so much on their shoulders at the moment. They just do not have the expertise to get into this. Because
It must be really hard. I might keep doing these parking fines.
until we have the expertise within the police.
But the billions they're making could pay for it all.
It could. Well, the Financial Conduct Authority averages nearly £1 billion a year in fines for misconduct.
Yeah.
And that should go straight into fighting fraud rather than going back to the Treasury.
And
the
compensate
Financial
the victims.
Conduct Authority should confine itself to conduct, and the National Crime Agency should do the crime. And they should deal with the international aspects of it, and the regional police forces should deal with the fraud, but they have to be paid to employ the experts to do it, because it's no good putting a police inspector or superintendent in charge of it who knows nothing about it. Yeah, sorry,
see,
that's a lady.
on Sheeda's case, I mean, I don't want to, obviously it's a complicated case,
Yeah.
but as an investigative journalist, usually it helps me when I can see firm evidence of where someone's fudged something. So in Sheeda's case, she's had a fight with the trustees, which has not gone especially well. In the sense that
Well, they're not trustees, as far as we
well, they're not. That's something that the court has not necessarily. I've not
But
seen.
it's not a court. That's what I'm saying. It's a
Well,
private
I don't
session.
know about that.
It's
actually.
ultra vires. These courts are actually I'm the same.
No, I don't want to
We've
get into that.
got-
I'm
we've
trying
got-
to make a very
we've got
simple point
evidence.
and
Yes.
help.
Yeah.
So just let me finish. Basically, she showed me recently a thing where basically, if you're not bankrupt, you have to show you're not bankrupt. It comes down to the money and the numbers. So, quite crucial to my understanding was her pointing out, on the supposed creditors that are being looked at. One of them is the inland revenue. So you've got this trustee saying, oh, you owe the inland revenue £8,000. She's got a letter of satisfaction from the inland revenue saying they owe her £8,000. So it's just simple, they've reversed it and claimed that as a debt when it doesn't exist. And I'm just wondering, is that strong enough for me to say to someone, look, this is a clear fabrication, false accounting, where someone's been told they are owed money by the inland revenue, and they can show the inland revenue has said it's the other way around. It's completely false. They're misleading the court.
Yes, they are misleading the court, but the trouble is the court, it's not a jury court.
Yeah,
It's up to a corrupt judge very often. And he's got a friend of his as the solicitor or the barrister, probably in the same chamber.
The
Or
people
he's
will
just
pass.
taking it on balancing probabilities, which means he's thinking that he trusts these people and they're not necessarily telling him the truth.
No, one of the problems, again, is the judges are very naive, and they will believe very often the bank's barrister. I mean, I've seen one classic case where somebody was defrauded by a bank. The valuations on their properties, 3 valuers were £3.5 million, give or take £100,000. The fourth one was 1.6 million, and they sold it for 1.6 million to their friends. And they then were running 2 parallel bank accounts, same sort number, same names, same dates, completely different things. And one goes to the court, and one stays there. I mean, and this is blatant corruption that does not take a brain of Britain or a clever judge or a clever, policeman to work out. And it's been sitting with Bristol, that one, with the Somerset Police for years, and they won't do anything about it. And I mean, it absolutely stinks.
Where can this be taken to? To whom can this be taken?
Well, I mean, Trevor Meelan went and disrupted the police crime battle fairly effectively the other day, which it makes it very awkward. But you don't actually probably win the argument. I think it's raised the pressure.
Nobody seems to know where to take it.
But there have been what now 7 parliamentary debates on this. Every one of those there hasn't been a disagreement between the MPs from 7 different political parties, or 6, I think. They've all agreed. Yet the Minister from the Treasury gets up and reads what the Treasury civil servants have told him to say. And the one slip they made was denying the Ross Cranston report. And he was a good judge, and he went for the core and got it. And that is going to cost lawyers between 500 million and £1 billion, which will go to the victims of that particular fraud. But it is only those that were done out of Reading and HBOS that will get compensated on that.
I'd like to, if I may, just set out a few ideas. I'm not suggesting these are good ideas whatsoever, but it might get the ball rolling in terms of moving things forward from here. I think it makes sense that we decide what the goal is that we're trying to achieve. I'd like to suggest that if there is a specific goal, it might be similar to something that's happened in Australia, which some of you may be aware of. There's been a very big open inquiry, a commission looking into exactly this kind of stuff that's been going on. That's the big goal. The short-term goals, I would suggest, are to actually nail things in the court with hard, irrefutable evidence based on fraud, documentation of documentation, dodgy signatures, etc. That could be the opportunity to get the ball rolling.
The file won't even arrive to the judge. That's the problem.
Yes.
What is unbelievable
Someone else come in afterwards. Hopefully not. So we've got at least until 3:30. Hopefully we need to do a bit more if there's no one else in this room afterwards. So I've introduced David. So if we start with you.
Yes, good morning everybody. My name's Adrian Price. I generally describe myself as a general purpose truth activist, but I'm here today on behalf of the New Chartist Movement and the British Constitution Group, for whom I maintain their two websites.
I'm Anthony Sansfield. I'm the Police and Crime Commissioner for Thames Valley, and my interest is that we did the HPOS one, which we're now getting. I hope everyone saw it's the Ross Cranston report. They're going to have to pay out, I think, the best part of £1 billion for what went on there. But we've got a very long way to go, which I'm very aware of.
Hi, my name's Michelle Young. I went through a very high-profile divorce. I believe my ex-husband was murdered. They've stolen assets in the region of £4 billion. They bankrupted me shortly after his murder, and this is 13 years later.